Well, ag producers dealing with the weather, some dealing with severe storms this week, others dealing with the heat. And Nebraska beef officially headed to China. We'll take you to Omaha as the first shipment is set out. And county beef fair managers get a chance to tour the Nebraska State Fair. It's time to grow. Well, thanks for joining us for this week's episode of NTV's Grow. I'm Regina Bird, filling in for Steve White. And we start off this week's Grow episode talking about severe storms that impacted part of the areas, some seeing golf ball size hail or larger hail. Tara Gibbons introduces us to one local farmer who woke up to a mess.
Severe weather on Tuesday evening brought some farmers a bit of a surprise. Damaged crops.
I thought, boy, it's raining really hard. And my son says, no, Dad. He says, that's hail.
But how does one farmer get ready for this?
And I'm not sure there's anything you can do to prepare for it. I guess you just try and do all the things that you can agronomically as far as planting the crop, and then hopefully that you're protected with some kind of crop insurance.
John and a local extension educator, Jenny Reese, spent part of the day checking to see if even some soybean plants are still alive.
Count then to see what you have for new regrowth.
The biggest piece of advice that we give is that it's just going to take time for those plants to regrow. We say it looks really bad right after the storm, but about 5 to 7 days you'll start seeing regrowth. And actually what helped us today was the sun and the warm weather.
Reese says from the plants she's seen here, there's potential for regrowth, but for some, they are already bruised.
Out in the field stems with new growth starting. That's not accounted for in the crop insurance information and even in our hail information. So unfortunately we know that damage down the road, when we get wind and so forth, those plants may break off later on in the season.
But John says there is always next year, and with this you just have to wait.
You hope that you don't have to go out here and replant or anything like that. I guess I'm going to do the wait and see what plants do survive and what kind of a stand I have.
If you experience crop damage, you can contact your local extension office. For more details, you can log onto our website, nebraska.tv. Tara Gibbons, NTV News, Lawrence.
Now we'll take a look at last week's poll. We asked you how concerned you are about herbicide drift, and our poll shows 31% are very concerned, 26% somewhat concerned, 24% a little concerned, and around 19% of those responded say not at all. Follow Grow on Twitter to cast your vote. Now, for the first time in 14 years, Nebraska beef is bound for China. The first boxes were sent from the Greater Omaha packing plant on Wednesday. China cut off exports after an outbreak of mad cow disease in 2003. Nebraska officials have been working to get things back to normal since then. A deal was finally reached last fall when Chinese officials visited Nebraska.
China is very anxious to get high-quality U.S. beef, and Nebraska produces more cattle than any other state. They also produce more beef than any other state, and we're known for very high-quality product.
Nebraska is the nation's top beef processor and exporter. The state exports around $1 billion worth of beef every year. We talked to Congressman Adrian Smith as the boxes were being loaded.
We want to sell to more places around the world, so more beef going to China, a very highly populated country. We know that with more ability on the part of many Chinese to purchase more protein, we want to benefit from that, and so I think this is great.
Smith says he's focusing on expanding trade even more. He recently introduced a resolution calling on Trump's administration to work on an agreement with Japan.
We know that U.S. beef tastes better than Australian beef, but right now, because Australia engaged in a trade agreement with Japan, that Japan reduced that tariff on Australian beef, it's time that we work to reduce that Japanese tariff on U.S. meat, U.S. beef especially.
Ag leaders spent this past week highlighting the importance of international trade at the Agriculture, Economic, and Technology Summit in Kearney.
The family farm is a global business.
From crops to cattle, Cornhusker farmers trade their commodities across the globe. It's an economic avenue Nebraska's top industry depends on.
We export $5.4 billion worth of agricultural products out of the state of Nebraska every year. Clearly, trade is really important.
But with many producers struggling to make a profit, Matt Havrick with the Nebraska Department of Agriculture telling farmers that international relationships are critical.
We produce way more than we could ever dream of consuming here, not only in Nebraska, but in the U.S. So trade is critically important for helping to support our prices our producers receive.
And opening the doors to China for U.S. beef will give Nebraska cattle raisers a boost.
We're the #1 red meat producing state, #1 cattle on feed, and out of all the states that are sending beef internationally, Nebraska actually is the state that leads the way. So we're the #1 exporter of beef.
Deb Gangwish and her family have 2 farm operations in the state and hope one day to sell their products directly to consumers overseas.
That would be incredible to have the beef we raise go to China or Japan or anywhere else in the world.
But until then, Gangwish thankful leaders are making investments in the future by cultivating relationships today.
It's not a job, it's a way of life. And that shows in what we produce. And thanks to people at levels higher up than us, folks that are traveling the globe, spreading the good news about Nebraska ag products, you know, we have this channel to bring our products to the global market.
Next on NTV's Grow, we catch up with the president of the Nebraska Farm Bureau.